You know what's really tough to do? Come up with a new idea for a video every single week. So I was scratching my head recently trying to think of something a little bit different to do rather than just tumble rocks all the time. And I thought, how about I tumble something different? And wood came to mind. So I thought maybe I'd try to make driftwood. Obviously, I'm not going to shine up the wood, but I might be able to make false driftwood or fake driftwood. Faux, that's the word, faux driftwood. That's the fancy word for fake. So I went and found some wood. I started by going out in the backyard and cutting these off some branches that had fallen off trees. So these are old dead pieces of wood. This one's oak. I think this one might be maple, but I'm not 100% sure. One end of these was cut by me just a few minutes ago, and the other end's kind of broken off and rotted. So we'll see if that makes any difference. So in those go. This is a piece of cedar. This is, I think this is maple. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's maple. This is a little chunk of a piece of 2x4. This is cherry, and it had a bad side on here, so that one's already kind of rounded off a little bit, and I wasn't going to use it for anything because of that. And then I thought, well, it'd be kind of cool if I could cut something into a shape and get a shaped piece of driftwood. People look for rocks and things on the beach, and they go, oh, this one looks like a heart, or this one looks like that. And I thought a heart-shaped piece of driftwood might be cool. I cut this on my laser cutter, which has been a lot of fun. I made the sign on the laser cutter. Anyhow, it's all burnt around the edges, so we'll see if it takes the burn off and kind of rounds the edges off. So in that goes. At this point, I don't know what to do. I've never tumbled wood before. My biggest concern is that it's all going to float to the top. So if I have a bunch of water in there, it might just, the wood might be up in the top and not really get much tumbling action. So I decided to put some rocks in with it to kind of fill up some of the space and also maybe bang it up a little bit. This is desert jasper. And so I'm just winging it. I'm going to put in that much. Looks good to me. And then I'm going to use sand. I thought about using silicon carbide. The sand won't have any effect on the rocks, or very little effect on the rocks, because it's going to be probably a little bit softer or about the same hardness as the rocks. But it will be harder than the wood, of course. Silicon carbide would get embedded in the rock, or in the wood, and you'd have these little black specks all over the place. The sand's going to get embedded too, but that's what driftwood is. It has sand in it. By the way, you don't really want to cut driftwood on your table saw or something, because it's going to ruin your blade because of all the sand that's embedded in it. So I'm going to pour in probably most of this. By the way, this is sand from Home Depot in a bag, because I had it in the garage for an experiment I did last year or the year before. I think I'm just going to put it all in. Alright, so about that much sand. That's filling it up pretty good. And then I've got some water. So we'll fill it up to about 3/4 with water. There's air bubbles coming up. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Maybe a little more. Alright, so I don't think there's enough room in here for the wood to float to the top. So I'm going to throw this on the tumbler for a week. We'll check on it then and see if anything's happened, and then make adjustments from there. If it didn't work the first week, we'll try something different, or maybe just let it go for another week. So stay there and we'll be right back. Well, it's been a week, and I don't know about you, but I'm excited. Can't tell by shaking it. Let's open it up and see what it looks like. I have no idea what to expect here. Oh, expect a mess. That smells funny. Doesn't smell bad, just smells, I don't even know what it smells like. Just smells different than a rock tumbler usually does. I'm going to need a bucket of water to rinse these off in, so just give me just a second. Alright, well there's the first piece. Stuff's kind of stuck on there. Alright, it is a little bit rounded. I think this is going to be a success. Yeah, you can see all the edges are rounded off pretty nicely. Let's open up and look at another one. This is the heart-shaped one. Interested to see if the black gets off the sides of it, and the black is off the sides. A little bit rounded on the edges. Probably use a little bit more. Here's my little chunk of 2x4. I think that's a piece of cherry wood. Very dark. This is one of the sticks, so here's the end that I cut off. And then here's the naturally broken end. Here's the other stick. Yeah, this is coming along nicely. I was prepared to try something different if this didn't work. I was going to try doing it dry. I was going to put the wood in wet again just because it was already wet, but I was going to use dry sand and let it go that way for a week. But I think I'm going to just stick with what I'm doing. This is also a little bit rounded on the edges, a little more on the corners. The corners are getting more than these edges are. But that's all looking pretty good. So there's my sand and stuff. The rocks are in there. I'm not really concerned about the rocks too much. I don't expect too much to happen with those. Although that sand is, I definitely feel sandy in there, but it doesn't feel like a pile of sand anywhere. So I think I might add a little bit more sand to this. And I'm going to let it run another week and see how it goes. Ugh. So it's going all back in. A little extra sand. Might dump a little bit of the water out. We'll see how it goes. And run it for another week. We'll see how it looks then. Well, I'm back again. After turning off the camera, I got curious about how much the sand had actually broken down. I could feel some in there, but it didn't feel very thick or very deep in the bottom. So I guess with it coating all the rocks, I just couldn't feel it very well because it's all still there. I dumped the whole thing into this bucket, and there's plenty of sand in there. So nothing has really happened to this. So I'm just going to use the same sand and put it on for another week. Well, a couple days ago, these got done with their second week of tumbling. I dumped everything into a bucket, rinsed it off really well, and then let it dry out so you could see what it looks like dry rather than wet. So they shaped up really nicely. Remember, this was a piece of lumber when we started, so it had square corners. And it's nicely rounded off, just like you'd expect it to be if it was a rock. But I figured you could see the rounding better, having known that it started out as a square, or practically a cube. So all this dimensional stuff kind of rounded off like that. This is a little bit harder to see how much the shape changed, except down here on the end, because I did cut that off with a saw, and you can see all these edges are rounded off nicely also. So the shaping turned out about like I expected. What was really interesting is the color change. I didn't think that this would change colors. I thought it'd come out looking pretty much the same color as it went in because it hasn't been out in the sun, baking in the sun, and I thought I'd have to do something to get that color. So I did a little reading, and I found that there's a stain you can make where you take vinegar and you soak steel wool in it, and the vinegar being an acid dissolves the steel wool, and when you paint it on some wood, it gives you that grayish color like driftwood has. So I was going to do that. I thought I'd have to do that, but I really like the color this turned out. It turned out kind of a gray color just in the tumbler there. So that turned out better than expected. The edges of this heart that were cut on the laser, they were all black. They're not black. There's a little bit of black way in the corner there that you can barely see, but this is all rounded off really nicely. This is super smooth. There is no grain popping up here, which there probably should be if it's driftwood, but you can't believe how smooth this feels. Of course, you can't feel it, so you just have to trust me on that. Super, super smooth. So here's a piece of actual driftwood. It's the only one that I happen to have in the house. And it doesn't really look like this stuff. Now, I don't know what this started out as. Was that a little board or was it a chip of wood? How'd it get so flat? I'm not really sure. This is really lightweight. This is a little bit heavier, a little more dense. But what this really has is it's like little cracks all over the place here. I know with like, I made a log bed for my son, so you got these big logs and they have cracks going down there. That's called checking. I don't know if this is called checking also, but it's the same sort of thing. And I don't know how to get that in this wood, if you'd have to let it sit out in the sun to get that effect from it. But the rounding part worked out well. So if you look at this, that looks similar. Still don't have the checking, but this natural wood's going to look a lot more like the stuff that I picked up on the beach. So don't start with dimensional lumber unless you want this look. Start with some sort of natural wood. Maybe take a hatchet and chop some of this stuff up so you get rough edges on it, and then put it in your tumbler. So the color, though, I thought was kind of similar. Not exactly the same, but not too far off, especially this stuff. All right, so now you know what the wood looks like, but you don't know what glass looks like in a tumbler. So last year, or maybe it was a couple of years ago, I did an experiment where I tried to make beach glass. You got to see that video. That was kind of fun. I was trying to make it exactly like the stuff I found, which had some little chips in it because the beaches that I picked the glass up are rocky beaches. So I was trying to replicate that, and I did a fairly good job. So go check that video out, and I'll see you over there.